So for customer orders, what we'll do is we'll go through a bit of the configuration for the customer orders within AX. We'll talk about creating them and modifying them from within the point of sale client. And then there's two different types. You can create quotes and you can create sales orders. We'll talk about the various methods of order fulfillment and then the ability to do cancellations and return orders. So really what we wanted to accomplish here is the ability to support, just support other transactions than just cash and carry transactions. So in AX 2009, obviously you can do cash and carry transactions. We had the ability to be able to recall a sales order that existed already and make payments towards it. And we had the ability to recall an invoice and make payments towards it. That functionality actually hasn't changed on the invoice side. But from a sales order perspective, we've added the ability to be able to create and modify sales orders from within the point of sale client. And the really interesting scenarios that we look at here is obviously the ability to sell something that's maybe out of stock. So you don't want to lose that sale. So you want to be able to take an order for that, create a sales order for that. Or maybe it's something special order. Maybe you don't normally carry it. So you want to be able to make sure you don't lose that sale. And then also just kind of different fulfillment scenarios of being able to buy it in your store and obviously pick it up at your store later, buy it in your store and pick it up at a different store because maybe they have it in stock, or buy it online and pick it up in the store, or it could be buy it in the store and ship it to you. So there's all sorts of different kind of cross-channel fulfillment scenarios that we're enabling here. And this is kind of I would call this the first release of this, and we'll continue to invest in this and make this even better as we realize the importance of it in many different retail industries. So if we look at kind of what was existing versus what's new here, so from online order sales, obviously you've been able to order online and then ship it to the customer. So nothing changes there, that's all the same. But to be able to order online and pick up in the store is a new capability that we're enabling. And then obviously to be able to do anything within the store short of make a payment, to be able to order in the store and ship it, or order in the store and pick it up in the store. And then that kind of little flow chart there just basically shows the difference between the process and the breakout between whether it's going to be picked up in the store or shipped. So when we look at the configuration, it's pretty basic, pretty simple. You're setting some defaults for what the point of sale client is going to do when it creates a sales order. So the first one is around whether your default is a quote or a sales order. So it could be that the retailer's most common process is to first create a quote for something, and then later on that becomes a sales order. So in that case, you would want the quote to be the default. And you can convert a quote into a sales order. So that same quote can be converted. Then there's information around deposits. So we can set minimum deposit amounts within the point of sale, so that when we charge the deposit, what that default amount will be. Our quotes can expire. You can set expiration dates for the quotes. And then for shipping and cancellation charges, there's a few different settings for which charge code to use when we create that order in AX. As well as what that fee would be, say if there's a cancellation fee. A minor change, but it's actually pretty important, is that there's a new variable available to display in the deposit information section, in the total section. So just like there was that customer panel within the screen layout, there's another one for totals, and that's also modifiable, just like the customer panel is. So here you can see that we've added deposit to within the amounts that are shown to the customer. So if you're using orders, it would be important to show the deposit information, or at least if you collect deposits, then you'd want to make sure you make a layout change for that. There are cashier privileges tied to the abilities to create, modify, or retrieve sales orders for fulfillment. And those are, like I said, those are set up. Those can be set at the permission group or overridden at the individual worker. We've made changes to the printed documents that can occur as the result of a sales order or a quote. And so there are 4 new receipt templates that can be assigned to receipt profiles. Obviously, one for each of the transaction types of sales order and quotation. And then the ability for the point of sale actually to be able to generate and print packing slips and pick up receipts. So those are configured. The templates actually ship. Some default templates ship as part of our seed data. So basically every installation will get a set of default receipt templates, but there's a designer to be able to modify those, so you can change the layouts and the content of each of these, just as you can with any of the printed receipts. So when creating and modifying sales orders, the point of sale client, basically all aspects of prices, discounts, taxation, is all using the point of sale logic to be able to do that. So clearly that means that you can use the point of sale discounts. It's going to use the point of sale pricing logic that Joseph had talked about. The tax calculation that the point of sale does is what's going to apply to this sales order when it's created within the point of sale. I've mentioned that we have a deposit display field and some deposit configuration settings. So obviously there's some deposit calculation that happens there. And then also on the back end for us to be able to post that deposit as a prepayment. And then dual printer support. It's somewhat limited capacity, but for the ability to have a dual printer support from point of sale and to be able to print a full page report. So that can be done by configuring the layouts and by setting up the receipt profile to know which printer to use for printing whichever document is that needs to be full page. So the scenario here is that the customers called and said that they're going to be picking up their merchandise at the store, and maybe it's a store with quite a large back storage room. And so maybe they need to actually generate a picking slip for someone, a stock clerk in the back, to be able to go get that because the customer's coming in to pick it up. From order retrieval, actually point of sale doesn't care what the source of the sales order is. So it can come from, obviously, the same store. It can come from another store. It could be an online store, or it could be created within the AX client. So in this case, a sales order is a sales order. We allow you to edit a sales order up until the point where it's either been packed or fulfilled. So at that point, then you can no longer modify the sales order. And then just 2 quick screenshots that we'll actually go through when we do the demonstration that shows the ability to recall the order by searching by the customer, by the order ID, to be able to get to the correct order that you're looking for, and then kind of a list of what can be done once you've recalled that order. We'll go through each of these. So the first one to talk about is just to pick up the order. That's probably the most common reason that you'd be recalling an order within the store. Again, I'll mention that it doesn't matter where the order was created as long as the store is listed as the fulfillment store. So in AX terms, the fulfillment warehouse. So when we recall that order into the point of sale, the balance is computed based on whatever the deposits have been paid so far. So whatever the total amount due is going to be less the deposit. We can do partial or full pickup. So if maybe it could be the fact that maybe only one of the line items for this customer is to be picked up at the store. Maybe another one's going to be picked up elsewhere or shipped. That could be one reason for partial fulfillment. The other could be that maybe just one item has come in and the other one hasn't. So you can do either partial or full pickup. And then finally, the order is settled against the deposits and the payment that's made when the order is fulfilled completely. And that's actually based on configuration settings within AR parameters as to whether there's auto settlement involved. You can cancel an order. So again, after it's been recalled, you're presented with these options for what you want to do with the order. And this is any time before it's been, I thought it was just packed and invoiced, but apparently it's picked, packed, and invoiced. And then from the retail parameters for customer orders, you can set whether or not there's cancellation charges. Should the the customer, should the order be canceled, then they'd be refunded any of that deposit less any of the cancellation charges that they've accrued or incurred. And then also another key point is that sales orders are canceled using transaction service. So they're created using transaction service, they're recalled using transaction service, they're canceled using transaction service. We can create a return order. So in this case, it's only for delivered or invoiced orders. So when you recall one of those, you'll be able to do a return order on it. And from there, you can select any of the items, any of the line items from that to be returned. From a posting perspective, it's all done using transaction service. So the initial sales order is created, or quote, but since quotes don't have any inventory or financial impact, in this case we're pretty much just focusing on sales orders. But in this case, the transaction service creates the sales order. When a deposit is made, then transaction service makes the prepayment journal entry. We do write the transactions from a sales order into the local store database like you would a cash and carry transaction. So even though this is being created kind of immediately or in real time using transaction service within AX, we actually still do write those transactions into the POS retail tables at the store database. But when you do your statement posting, we know that those have already been taken care of, and so therefore they're ignored. So some of that information is useful because of the journaling that we do to be able to view that transaction within the journal in the store. It's also useful because even though the transaction, the sales order has already been created within AX, we still need to know about that from a money perspective from the terminal, so that when you're doing your end of day and your closing, we know that you actually collected this deposit information. So all of that information is saved just like it would be a regular cash and carry transaction, but when we do posting, those are flagged so that we know that not to double post them. We wouldn't want to create another sales order for that customer. So we'll jump into demo and show how this works. So we'll just first take a quick look at those parameters. Like I said, it's pretty basic and pretty simple, and it's mostly around just setting what those defaults are. So the first is whether you're defaulting as a sales order or a quote. Here in our demo data, it's defaulting as sales order, and that we have a 10% minimum deposit for that sales order. So when the customer chooses pickup as their mode of delivery, we need to know which code to assign that to within AX when we're creating that sales order. And so this is where you would select that appropriate code here. Our sample data, unfortunately, doesn't have any disposition codes in it. But in this case, this is the code that you would use for when there's a return order that's processed. And we have plans in the future for the users to be able to choose from multiple disposition codes. At this point, it's only just a default disposition code that's utilized. The quotes that are created will have, in this case, a 30-day expiration date, and then a 5% cancellation charge. And then finally at the bottom are which charge codes to use. So for shipping, which charge code do you use? And the sample data has one for freight, and then has one for cancellation. So now that I've configured the customer orders, there's one, actually I didn't have a slide for this, there's one POS operation that would be very useful for this feature, which would be the recall order button. So the create order and order details button is actually part of that customer panel. So just by nature of having that customer panel in there, you're going to take care of those two buttons. But if you want to be able to actually recall an order, then you need to be able to add that POS operation. So in the demo data, it's a little bit hidden under Edit Transaction, and then Recall Order. So this is the POS operation that's going to go and have a transaction service call to find any orders for this customer. So then from within the point of sale, let's say I order a few items, or I want to buy a few items. Actually, let me show you one thing that we did that's new. It's a pretty minor change, but I think it's worth showing. So when we do an inventory lookup, we've added the ability to add the item to the transaction right from the inventory lookup, rather than having to find that it's out of stock or find the item this way and then have to go ring it up again separately. So through this scenario, they've looked up to see, do you have any of this product in stock? And you don't, but they want to order it anyway. So in this case, I can add it to the transaction this way as well. So we'll get a weightlifting bench and a yoga mat. And then I can create my order. And actually, you can do this in any order. I'd like to add the line items first, because then when you're choosing your shipping and delivery methods, especially if you're doing mixed mode, you need to have those line items there. But by going into the order information, create order, it brings up the order information dialog, which is new, obviously, in 2012. Here you can change from the default if you wanted to create a quote rather than a sales order. In this case, this isn't an order yet, so there's no status available. We default the salesperson to the current cashier, whoever's logged in, but you can change this to a different one if you wanted to give someone else credit for the sale. And then you have the ability to add just some quick kind of header comments to the order that gets created. Customer information. So had I added the customer at the time I was ringing up those items, then the customer would already be added here. But since I didn't, and customer information is required for orders, this gives you the opportunity to either create a new one or look up an existing customer. And these actually just call those same dialogues that we have if you were to launch them from the other POS operations. So I'll just search and add the customer this way. That brings in the customer's base information. Now, shipping and delivery is where you can take a few different paths. So I'll show each of these here. So if I choose ship all, then that means I'm going to ship it the entire order to one address. And I can choose that address. This is the same shipping address form that we had before. In this case, this customer only has one. I could create a new shipping address if I'd like to, or I can just select it. Choosing the shipping method, this is configuration data that comes down from AX. So these are all the shipping methods that are defined within the AX database. So in this case, I'm going to send it by air. Obviously, you would maybe have FedEx, UPS, or different types of delivery methods here. We have the ability to set a base shipping charge for the out-of-the-box functionality, which is really just the user entering an amount. So I can imagine customizations for being able to calculate that amount, either based on some homegrown shipping schedule based on quantity or weight or value, or by going out to a third-party service like UPS or FedEx or something like that. But in this case, we can just set a basic shipping charge, and we'll handle it from a money perspective. The requested delivery date is a required field, so you can think of this as either the when the customer wants it shipped, or you can think of it as kind of the estimated delivery at this point anyway. And now that I've chosen ship all, the status of that one has been changed. If I go into the order summary area, then you can see a detailed breakdown of the header information as well as the lines that are on there. And some of the interesting information to see is the deposit amount that's been calculated. So there's the 10% deposit at $18.60. It's got the shipping charges as the miscellaneous charge for $5. The delivery methods that's been set. So you can see all that information here from within the order summary. I'm actually going to go back and change this. So maybe I wanted to mix mode, mixed delivery. So now you can do this per line item. So if I wanted to maybe pick up the yoga mat but have the bench shipped, I could choose to pick this up at a store. And you can choose which store it's going to be fulfilled at. And again, there's the requested delivery date. Let's say I want to pick it up at my own store. And then the bench I want to have shipped. This just goes through that same flow again. But I can choose the shipping address and add the shipping method and the requested delivery date. And now I've got line level delivery methods, one pickup and one ship. And you'll see that this one's now highlighted as green. If I go to the order summary, this is going to switch around a little bit, and it's going to show that line information down at the bottom as well. So you'll see the delivery method and the pickup within the lines rather than within the header. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Oh man. Pardon me. Or you can do pick up all, which is what I'll demonstrate. This is the quickest way to do it. So here I'll go ahead and set that requested delivery date. I'll set it to the Seattle store, which is the store that I'm using. And looking at the order summary, you'll see that that's reflected there. So one quick point about the VM that you have, I don't know if you've played with it yet or noticed, but we actually do have 2 stores that are deployed on the VM. And through a clever method of some batch files and some multiple shortcuts. Oh, Balaji? Could I show that? I don't know. I used my hidden minimize button. Yeah, so we're using the same VM that you have. No magic here or smoke and mirrors, as you can tell, at certain times throughout the demos. But you can see that there's two terminals within the Seattle store. So this is really good for demoing, say, floating till, moving one till from one terminal to the other within the same store, or maybe doing blind close, which I think we're going to talk about tomorrow. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, you will tomorrow. And then there's also one for the New York store. So if I wanted to maybe create the order in Seattle and then pick it up in the New York store, you can all show that within one VM. So it's actually a pretty good idea to be able to do that. There's actually 2 store databases behind this, and when you launch it, it'll just use a quick batch job to switch which configuration file it's looking for which database to connect to. Okay, so let me just double check to make sure I got everything in here. I've got my salesperson, I've got my customer information, I'm picking it up so I don't need a shipping address, and my summary looks okay. So in this case, I'm ready to collect that deposit, and here's where I've put in that deposit field here. Now clearly this is all user definable also, so you can lay this out any way that you'd like it to be, but what this is telling me is that my deposit due is 1810. So I'll go ahead and collect that deposit. And now this uses transaction service to go and create that order within AX. Now this is one, again, if it's the first time you've done it, can take a while. I've seen it take quite a few seconds, all the way down to just like 1 or 2 seconds. So there we go. The order's been created now. If I switch over into AX and look in accounts receivables at all sales orders, you'll see here's this Tony Poe sales order that I had created, and it's got my yoga mat and deluxe incline bench. So it'll look pretty much just like any other sales order if I had created it within AX. One interesting thing to point out is probably like maybe the only different thing we do about it is that there is this checkbox that identifies it as an order that was created from, in this case it says retail, but what this means is it's been created from point of sale. There's another thing that we do for a reporting perspective is that we actually associate the operating unit ID to this sales order too for the originating order. And that's so that when we do our reporting from our sales cube, we know where the order originated from so that that store gets credit for the sale. So I'm going to recall that order. So we can imagine time has passed and the customer's coming in to pick it up. I can recall the order. If I know the order number, I can get it just by the order number. If I know the customer's ID, I can just type that in. But since I don't know either, I'll look them up. That lookup does a transaction service call, actually, a pretty quick one, and finds that sales order. Brings it back down in, and then when you select it, it brings up that order again into the point of sale. So this is a pretty big difference over AX 2009, where 1, I was able to create them, and 2, when you recalled one, you can actually see those line items now. Whereas before, it was just a single line item that said like sales order payment or something like that, or maybe the sales order number was in there. But now you can actually recall a sales order that was originated anywhere, whether online or within the AX client, and be able to view those details here. And not only view the details, but you can actually modify it as well. So actually, I kind of skipped over that. So now you see that after the order's been created and it's a recalled order, it says order details here now rather than create order. If I click that, then you'll get that box of options that I had in my slides. View details just brings you back to this dialog here, and you can see all the information about it. Recalculate will recalculate the information on the sales order based on whatever the current data is. And by that I mean like prices. So when we create a sales order and we do the point of sale calculation to determine what that price is kind of considered locked. Like this is the price that we've put onto this order. However, should time pass and maybe prices change and you actually want to take the new price for this, then we can click recalculate and it'll recalculate everything based on the latest information. So if any new discounts have been applied or the prices have changed. It will just do a recalculate though, so there's nothing to tell you that you're going to recalculate for the better or for the worse. Close order just says, all right, I'm done with this, so I won't click that one or else I'd have to recall it again. But close order just gets rid of it. If I wanted to, say, generate a picking list for someone in the back storeroom to be able to go and get this down off the shelf, then I could click Create Picking List, and that would do that. So it would print out the picking list document that's defined within the receipt profile, and then the user can go pick that. Cancel order would actually cancel the order and then apply any cancellation fees that I've defined within my parameters, and then refund whatever amount of the deposit that's left over. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and click Pickup Order. So from here, it brings you back into the order details information page. And directly to the items where you can see now you can set your pickup quantities. So you can do partial pickup. If I was only going to pick up the yoga mat, I could pick up one of those. Or you can click Pick Up All Items, and it'll bring you back into the transaction here. One thing to mention while you're here is if I go into, say, Pickup, should this be a mixed order where some is shipped and some's picked up, or some's meant to be picked up elsewhere, then you would not be able to fulfill it from within the store. So if the yoga mat was being shipped, then that would actually be disabled, and I would not be able to pick up that yoga mat. Now, if the customer changed their mind, or if you decide that you want to fulfill it in a different way, you can modify that, but you actually have to first recall the order, modify it, and save it so that it goes back up to AX that way, and then recall that order again. So it's not ideal, but you can still do it. But until then, you can't even modify those quantities. So now it looks pretty much just like a regular sales transaction, except for I've got deposit that's being applied there. So you can see the balance due is going to be the total less the deposit. So I only owe $162.94 here. I'll go ahead and close this out. And this again is going to be another transaction service call that goes up and is going to invoice and create the payment journal entries for the remaining amount. If I go back to this one and refresh, right now you see it says open order. If I refresh it, it's been an invoiced order.